So, where should we begin? We're going to start. We're going to do, or I'm going to talk to a couple of things. One is the story aspect on paper, I guess, or what you're going to, the documentation that's going to go with yourself and with your visual material. And I'll talk about writing proposals for foreign funding. I think we all have kind of some experience of trying to get money locally. So if you want to talk about that, we can talk about that. But I think everyone kind of maybe has some idea of the NFVF processes. But foreign funding is an interesting space. And then we're going to talk about the materials that you have. And yeah, the kind of pitching material or trailers or promo or selects or whatever it is. Or even if you don't have anything, like what can you maybe present to someone? I'll kind of use some of my own project that I'm working on as an example. So a project is going, and as an editor, you know, if it's a long form film, you're on it for like 3 or 4 months. So the first 2 weeks is just lots of talking about life, about your experience. Because as a director, as a producer, you don't just come with the project, right? You don't just come with the material. You come with 20 years of life experience, and you come with maybe more with a relationship with your brother. It's all coming in there. All of that is in this space, this editing space, which is really kind of a holding space, I guess. It's the beginning of the end for many of these projects. So there's some separation anxiety, and there's lots of other anxieties that come in there. So lots of talking is needed to kind of just figure out, do you want to sit with this person for the next 3 months, in the same room, or do they want to sit with you? And can you hold the story? Can you kind of really support that? Your relationship to the story is very important, right? When it comes to these, from what I've kind of understood from these pitching forums, or these kind of meetings or whatever they are. I'm not exactly sure how Sheffield are, what you're going into Sheffield with, because they have the official pitching, but they also have specific roundtable stuff, and you also have meeting someone in a bar. You also don't want to be going on for 10-15 minutes about your project in a bar with someone. They want to, at the end of the day, you just want to, so ultimately you just got to kind of be yourself, and you've got to be also relaxed. And I think these trips are also an opportunity to have a good time, and to network, but also just to jawl a little bit. Hot dogs is good for that. You should organize some more at the Omega. They organize the Arab festivals are great, like Beirut, Tunis, Dubai, like lots of fun, and they treat you well. Yes, but
I'll get it.
Qumra is good, also in Doha. Anyway, that's about it. So I would kind of take these trips as you've got to be serious, and you've got to be formal about it, but also you've got to take it with a pinch of salt, and that this project you're embarking on is it's a long game, So it's not like you're going to go there. I wouldn't invest everything into this idea that you're going to go there with a project and you're going to get money, because in this game, in this kind of expensive hobby that we do, there's lots of rejection, right? And it's mostly rejection, really. Even when you finish your film, people will reject it. People will kind of just brush it aside, like we do when we watch films and we say, "Oh, that was rubbish. Next," But you've been on it for 20 years, 25 years. It's not that. But I think serious documentarian documentarians and serious festivals like Sheffield take you seriously. So it's not, I'm not saying it's just a frivolous experience, but it's not at all. I think the main thing I got out of going to various festivals with the project is that it keeps it alive in myself, right? It keeps that passion of what I'm doing alive, and it tests whether or not I'm trying to make this film for the right reasons. You know, if you have to go year after year or month after month pitching and getting rejection, and you feel like you want to just give up, you've got to question yourself, like, why are you even doing this? I mean, I come from the position of, that's why probably one of the reasons I prefer editing other people's projects is that the films I make, I only make them because I feel like I don't have a choice. I have like an onus to make them. Right? So the first film I made was about my maternal grandfather in Cape Town, who was a religious leader, an imam in Cape Town, and he left kind of a strong legacy here. And then, so I grew up in London, and I was schooled there, and I worked there, but my mum is Cape Townian, so I was kind of drawn here, and I was drawn to make a film. Took 6 years, okay, fine. And now this film I'm making is about my father, who was a Libyan exile when Gaddafi came into power, and he had to leave because he was opposed to this new regime. And so he met my mum in London, who was also kind of self-exiled here, there. But he never went back. He didn't go back until 2012, after 2011, after Gaddafi was killed, ousted and killed. So this was another story, you know, because I kind of lived this dream of exile and this dream of home. Well, the dream of my father's exile and his dream of going home by proxy my whole life. We were growing up in London. And so when there was this opening for my dad to go back, he went. And so I kind of felt, because of the skills I have or what I learned, I felt an onus to kind of tell this story. So I come from that point of view. Hello, there's my daughter, Inaya. So I come from that position. Like, if you've got to at some point question yourself, you know, why am I making this film? For me, I think, obviously it's also a career, right? So you need to find another project after the one project. But I question that myself. I kind of question especially when it's this very independent, long-form documentary that you're going to just throw everything at. You've got to really question your place in it, I think. But, you know, each to his own. So your relationship to the story is like the first thing. And I think when you come to meet someone who's a producer, who's maybe not a buyer, but we'll talk about buyers in a minute. When you come to a producer or a funder, I think the first thing one of the early things you need to say is why are you making this film? You know, you have a film because it's about your brother who disappeared for a long time. Yeah.
No, I mean I knew where he was.
You knew where he was, but he disappeared from your space.
Completely. Yeah.
So in a way, it's your search for him, in a way.
Yeah, well,
right?
the access that I managed also to get through these diaries, he's a hermitish type of person, but to be able to, I was close to him, but in a non-verbal way, and to actually access his interior, and also, I suppose, the admiration that I had for adventure and for that masculine thing that I think.
So much a film about you as it is about him.
I know.
Yeah.
I can't
So
help
that's
that.
not easy, eh?
Yeah.
It's not easy. To open yourself fully. It's easier for us to have a subject and say, no, this is the subject. But then when you not even turning the camera on yourself, when you're placing yourself into the story, it's not easy.
I'm trying to let him speak though.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it's really about you. I mean, you're there
But
going.
it's such an interesting question that you're raising.
Yeah.
How far can or should one introduce oneself into the story? It's like that famous film made about Marlene Dietrich who refused to be interviewed on camera, and the filmmaker, who is an actor, a German actor, made the whole film about her elusiveness and his experience of trying to find her, get her to talk to him. And I think that can be a whole dimension, especially with elusive subject matter. Your own feelings. I mean, I think the story sounds absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
You're part of it, yes.
I mean, I think for these let's say these Western and Eurocentric and American funders and producers, they will very quickly start to box you, right? They'll put you, okay,
Slot you.
You slot you. So is this a Nat Geo film? Is it Discovery? Probably even for the archaeology film. Or is it a personal film? And there are these trends that come and go throughout the decades within this kind of global industry. And, you know, 4 years ago, 2 years ago, if I was making my film about, you know, the expansion of ISIS in Libya, right, and my dad around there somewhere, then they'd be throwing money at it, right, because it's topical and it's kind of fashionable. You don't hear about ISIS now at all, you know? Why? You've got to kind of question that. I mean, and so during the 2000s and maybe earlier, there was a strong trend for the personal film, right? So producers and funders and broadcasters were throwing money at these personal films. Now it's like less fashionable. So one of the things you've got to look at is like which is not fair also. Like what is that current trend? Because they like...
What is the current trend?
Yeah.
What are they looking at now?
I don't know. What are they looking at?
Social impact.
Yes,
Social
that's a
impact.
big thing. It's like, what's your media, what's your social impact
Who are you
strategy?
saving?
Exactly, all of that kind of stuff. I mean, which is also leaves you a bit redundant in your... Because you feel like, well, why does it have to be that? I mean, it could have a social impact anyway. You know, your film will have a massive impact, not just socially, but globally, right? But they're looking for these, also this kind of, especially you coming from here, how is your film going to save Africans, you know? Which is, you know, it's hectically insulting. So the farm films will probably do quite well, you know, if you pitch the right way. So you can also play the game. You can also play with these trends to get the money, and you make the film you want to make. Once you get into co-productions with outsiders, then it's more problematic. Then you kind of, the creative is now creative.
Did you for your films, did you get into co-production?
No. Well, the first film I made, I just started making it on my own. So it's very kind of lo-fi, but it's a personal film, so it kind of works. It's family-oriented, but it's this kind of political, historical story. There wasn't co-production there. This film, I've had meetings with people about them over the, you know, Germans and French and some Danish, but nothing's really material. I have a producer now. Now I didn't have a producer. I have a producer with this film, so we're constantly having this discussion. The co-production thing is can be good. Like for instance, Norway, they have lots and lots of money, but they're always seeking co-production because there are not that many films coming out of Norway. Many films from the Middle East. At the moment, you'll see there's co-production, right? So it's like a German Lebanese film, or it's a Palestinian Dutch film. You know, so there's lots of because there's I think since the Arab Spring, I guess there's opened this more funding from the Middle East or from that MENA region for those kind of films. So, which is interesting because the Arab film community is thriving and it's really quite powerful. Lots of films coming out. If you go to one of these festivals, or if you just go to Beirut, DC, and you'll see, quite surprised. I don't know your experience of maybe with the Arab film world, but it's really quite heaving, thriving industry. And I'm quite always surprised that there's not much communication with us.
And this has to change because
Yeah.
Tunis is great. They give co-production or post-production money. And there's a new festival called El Buna, just opened last year, and they're open now for this year's festival. It's fantastic. Real prizes for the films, short films, mid-length. As long as you have a MENA kind of connection, they really want that.
It was usually asked for an Arab producer
Yeah.
or director, so I've always found that a bit of a problem. So you've got a great story, but they won't go for it if you're not them.
Mm.
Yeah, but you can go into some of these pitch project forums looking for them, or just, it's worth going actually, just saying I'm interested in going. And they invited me last year to listen to the pitches. Sundance was there, they invited everybody, Tip was there. It's a really, really thriving, and they're trying to be the antithesis to sort of politically correct films. So there were a lot of very, very Festival for Humanity kind of freedom of expression type films, and very great curation. And I know a project you worked on got into competition at Tunis and then went back and got into competition. So I mean, these are, and there was no North
She went to
African-
the, she went to the final, the edit pitch.
Yeah.
where you
I was
filmed
a
it.
jury on that
Oh, really?
one, so it was kind of cool. to
Okay,
be
and then
there
a year
see
later
her
it was
pitch.
finished and she got.
And she got into competition. And great festival, they fly you there, and you know, 1 or 2 filmmakers from each film, so you're in that whole festival networking thing for your next projects. So it's great that you're bringing 2 or 3 projects with you, because you know you're going to meet different people hanging out for 10 days if you get into competition.
But with the Arab, I mean, we were going to talk about it now. With the Arab, the MENA region funding, a few years ago there was lots of money. There was Dubai, they still have a post-production fund in Jazz, but the festival's not funded.
They're struggling a bit at the moment.
They're struggling.
which is a bit of a-
There was Abu Dhabi had a Sanad fund. There's 2 funds in Beirut, and there's Abu Dhabi, Dubai, and Doha. Doha's the only one that's kind of really good, kind of continuing, and they have a big fund, which is now open for international submissions. So they'll give you up to $50,000 US dollars. Obviously now it's more competition. Before it was just for MENA region projects and predominantly Arab producer or director attached. But now they're open for international projects. Yes.
We were advised by our project by delegates to partner with a researcher because that would strengthen our chances of getting funding.
Oh.
But and I said to him, oh, that's fine, but then the work we have to make the researcher's product, it stops being a creative documentary.
Oh.
He said, well, do you want that or not?
Was he specific though, researcher for what? In what?
Well, in our case specifically, and we have done that now, we have partnered with a researcher.
Yeah.
And luckily for us, the researcher doesn't want any part in the creative storytelling part, they're just giving us free rein, which is great. But I'm just curious if that's been everyone else's experience, because I haven't heard that before. But he said currently people are really struggling unless they're partnered with some sort of organisation or the social impact trend that he was mentioning.
Yeah, this is one of the problems, one of the trends, is like you need this kind of impact component of your project. I don't think, like a researcher is someone who helps research.
Yes, it doesn't make sense. Well, not an individual, he meant an organisation.
An organisation.
Yeah, an organisation that's doing some sort of research on the ground that is...
Okay.
So like Amnesty, you know, you need to go with somebody who...
Right.
It's much to do with credibility of you as a filmmaker. So enhancing that an organisation in the subject area recognises you are approved to be working in that area.
But then how would it work with those? So I mean, I understand the logic behind it, but at a pitch, for example, if you go to Sheffield Doc.Fest, would you then pitch, make sure to sort of name drop your Amnesty International partner?
Yeah, why not? You could, why not? depends to what level if they're commissioning you to make a film, it's different than if you are partnering. I mean, on a positive note, it opens up a whole different avenue of funding through that whole NGO world.
It does seem to make sense from the perspective of they can accept you at face value as you're an expert filmmaker, but then you have an expert on the topic on which you're making the film. So it kind of, I guess, would make it easier for them to want to say, okay, we can get behind this, we can put money into this.
It's trust. It becomes, I think, about trust.
If I could jump in here, I think Dear Mandela had all its money for distribution based on its social impact. At the end of its festival run and at the end of its other run, it was partnering with people to get the word out, and it was being used educationally, and that gave it a lot of legs because it already had funding, but at the end, so for bringing a film into colleges and schools and stuff, and that just gave it that leg up. So when you go out there, you can say, I have a distribution model at the end, sort of. I don't know how you frame it, tell the story nicely, but I remember that project really had early distribution, and there's a lot of money in that area of the value chain, especially in America, because corporate media has taken over. So people are pouring money into that kind of activist intervention.
I just wanted to say that one project that I have, which didn't come to fruition, where we died of encouragement after the good pitch. But I did get the Department of Education, who previously distributed training material based on human rights dramas that I had done, which we got funded for DFID, to write an enthusiastic letter, which I still have and will revive, because if you can say this is going to go into schools, and I've done it before, and we partnered with outreach organizations, because the life skills section, as I understand it, of South African schools is very poorly supplied with visual, engaging material. And the strangest thing, like a project that I want to take there about waste pickers, informal recyclers. The Department of Education, when I went and met with them, said, oh, this is great, it's about business. I said, business? He said, yeah, these are entrepreneurs. Business we can use to show people how to do that, and it has to do with waste management, and it has to do with informal settlements, it has to do with people overcoming disability, it has to do with overcoming passivity, it has to do with poverty. And they saw a whole lot of things that I hadn't immediately seen. So I do think that if one can find possibilities, it doesn't do any harm to go and say, can I speak to you at the Department of Education? Are you interested? And they basically, in that one case, with the dramas where we made outreach, DFID gave R1 million for the outreach and R1 million to the series, because they wanted that. And that's something you can leverage. I think one has to keep doing that. Previous things I have done have led to this, and we have credibility from that point of view, I think.
Exactly. So Don has a point, and he knows kind of what's trending, I guess, and what's needed for those. I mean, for me, it means I would look at that like, it's like, oh my God, I have to go into another relationship now with someone else, or a whole lot of, it's like the co-production thing. Do I want to have this relationship now, It's probably good for the film, I think one of the problems we have in terms of the kind of films we make here, I feel, because I see lots of films come in and out, and I work on lots of films all the time, and it's usually like, what's the big story, what's the big picture, and gone are those, hopefully not gone are those days of the kind of the quiet, intimate film about the minutiae of life, right, rather than, and I think maybe it's not so, you can't really sell that with an NGO kind of impact strategy. It has to be like, here are the struggling people of the community, and here's the mining company. Let's partner up with an NGO and, try and push that story. Or maybe even with the archaeology film, there's some kind of social impact around, I don't know, the community who lives nearby. And it kind of all, it feels, look, it will help you make your film, but you just have to be prepared to go into that relationship. And that's maybe my problem, you know. And of course, we're here in the world to have relationships with people, so why not?
Yeah. To add to the topic of funding, I should mention that, and I mentioned that earlier on. For my project, I'm very community oriented, focus on community. So I started an NGO in 2005, 2006 registered. So then I met another director. I said, where did you get the money from? I said, I started an NGO, and from the NGO, I filled in an application to the lottery. See? So I did this, but I had to wait 4 years to get, okay, but I got $5 million, you know? But it's $5 million for a 13-part documentary is nothing, because it's traveling, it's enormous expenses. And but still, that is. I just wanted to table this. That's an important. Just think about the lottery. Okay, my dedication is a community, and still a community. I'm still running an NGO, but I had to join. I'm also in the tourism industry, but the tourism industry is a facilitator for me to get cultural knowledge. So everything serves towards the document. So, it takes time. It took me more than 10 years now to get that documentary running. And I was never dreaming in my life that I'd become a producer. It just happened. But can I deviate from the funding? My interest, my personal interest, and I think everybody's interest as well, is in sales and distribution. I don't know really how to handle it. But everybody agrees that we could elaborate on this. I mean, this is, for me, it's a problem.
It's the next section. I think it's the next section today.
Teresa talking about.
Yeah.
So maybe we
Talking
just,
about story.
let's go back to like how you would then present your project on paper to someone you're meeting for 10 to 15 minutes, right? Because usually I think if you're not in the big pitch, then you're going to have like a round table thing, or what do they call it, this hot
Speed dating.
Yeah, speed dating thing. You get 10 minutes, and then you just bounce from person to person. If you are going to have a pre-organized meeting with someone, say from Channel 4, about your project, they will also be heading to Sheffield with 20, 30, 40 other meetings. What I've learned from speaking to these people and other people is that your document, which will be a synopsis, a logline, and technical info, some kind of treatment, maybe 5 to 10 pages, with character bios, and then you end up with like a 15-page document or more, gets read, on the aeroplane in between flights. Yeah. So whatever you present on the first page needs to really sing, because you put yourself in that position, and you have all these documents you can print it out, or I guess on a laptop, read on an aeroplane, or that kind of space. Yeah, it's hardly ever. These are usually producers who are busy as busy as you and I, and they won't fit it into their daytime schedule. So they have to also find the time to do it. So what do you want to show them, right? What do you want them to get up to grip them in order to read on? And even then, I mean, in the treatment, they're hardly going to read the whole treatment. So forget about writing like a 20-page treatment, which is like very detailed. You might need it at some point, and it's good for you to understand how you're telling your story. And you need to be open to having to rewrite it again and again. And when you're filming, go back to your treatment and then rewrite it. And when you're editing, you throw that treatment out and you're writing it again with all the material. So that's kind of a constant process. So in terms of what you're presenting to someone, if so there are different kinds of meetings, right? There's that meeting you have which is booked, right? So you're going to have like maybe half an hour with someone, plenty of time to talk about yourself, the project, to show them something, to see what they're looking for, and just to kind of, just be more relaxed. And then you have maybe the speed dating thing, which I think probably everyone would do, isn't it, people? Well, there'll be some speed dating thing. So you'll get like 10 minutes maybe with 10, 15 different people, varying from funders, producers to broadcasters. Then you've got to know like where are you at with your project. If it's just in development, not just, if it's in development, then kind of talking to a broadcaster is a little bit premature because they're looking to buy stuff sooner rather than later. But they can point you in the right direction, or they can give you some. So with those broadcasters, if you're in development, you kind of want to charm the hell out of them so that they remember you when you make your film, right? And you say, remember when we met and we had a drink or whatever, how are your kids? How's your dog? Whatever it is. And so you want to kind of hook them into yourself. Like all of them, you've got to charm, I guess, everyone into you and then into your, and also into your project. If you're going, so there are many projects here in various stages. It's always useful, as you probably know, the people who have finished films, you're going with another project in mind, right? And that's always the next question. Someone asks you in that thing, like, okay, finish this film, what else have you got? What's your slate? Maybe you have a few, I guess you got 13-part series.
I have about 10 other projects. Because I was waiting for such a long time, so I make use of the time.
It's like when you go to speed dating that I did experience at Storyfest, where it was interesting. You like had a pitch, and they say, "I really, really liked your pitch, but we're into horror. Have you got any horror films for us, or what else are you working on?" And well, it's really good to have a few things up your sleeve that you can pull out and say, "Well, actually, I do have." The other advice I was given was if your thing is incomplete, talking about scripts, and you say to them, well, can I see your script? If they ask for that, and you don't want to send it to them because you haven't done it yet, and you don't sound sure, you say, and then you don't, and then a month later when you finally done it, or you haven't, you say to them, "Oh, sorry, so much work came up, I couldn't get to polish it before sending it to you." So you present it very much like you're there.
So, okay, get back, where was I on track about, okay, so if you're sitting with someone, 10 minutes, right? So you're going to start with, the person's going to be sitting there like this. They're going to be like, okay, what you got? Like, entertain me kind of thing. Because I want to meet, I'm thinking about other things, or I've just seen a film, or thinking about a deal I want to make. So how do you grab their attention immediately, right? I guess it depends on your project. You can either start by saying, "Let me show you something." Yeah, it really depends. Each project is very much different than the next. You either want to tell them why you're making this film, your relationship to the story is very important. What kind of character this is, yeah? Like when you started talking about your, the island, I mean, suddenly everyone is like, "Whoa, what is this place?" Sounds like something out of Star Wars, right? Star Wars. And then people are thinking, well, what do we see? How are you going to make this film if it happened all this time? And then you say, well, I have all these video diaries. And then suddenly it's like, wow. When you talk about your character, your subject being I don't know, eccentric. I mean, you've got to be eccentric to live in this place. then you've got there's something interesting there to talk about. And then you're like, well, he's my brother. Suddenly becomes an interesting project, you know, something you want to maybe see through. Or
what I
know
didn't
more
mention
of.
was also the character. He calls his camera vid.
Ah,
So,
okay.
you know, like Castaway with that ball,
Ah,
it's a little bit like that. It's that relationship. So there are a lot of dialogues where he's
Oh, really?
actually fucking mad with this guy, which is the only other guy with brains on the island. And so he
Yeah.
projects a whole lot
Yeah.
of stuff onto him. So there's that kind of thing, but it's not a la whatever it was, whatever Grizzly, you know,
Oh,
which was
that's
only a
good.
film, which was only interesting because the guy get munched, but the
Yeah.
guy himself, Thurman or whatever it was,
Yeah.
is a little bit of a weak character.
but your film's nearly finished. You're in post with it now.
I'm in post. It's we've just returned now with the sort of island character
Yeah.
footage, and actually I went with my brother, took him back there. And he met the guy who's been living there now for the last 20 years. And that's why I'm also interested in this impact side, because my documentary is not an impact documentary, it's a subjective documentary, but actually the problem is enormous, because those birds are all dying,
Yeah.
and the oceans are depleted. So I was kind of, in one of my pitches to some organization, I actually wanted to make a sort of an addendum about, you know, more the impact
Yeah.
side of it, the ecological side of it. But yeah, Vid is a character.
And so, if you were to go to speak to someone for 10 minutes,
Yeah,
with a project that's nearly finished,
yeah,
I mean, you know the material very well. You probably have a trailer, but I would like to see a scene, like
Yeah.
the strongest kind of 2-minute scene you've got, rather than
Then a
trailer,
teaser.
or a teaser, not even a teaser. I'd be like, well, show me something. What do you have of this guy screaming at the camera, or talking to himself, or what?
Yeah, yeah.
And then you will explain how you will then tell a story out of it. You know, maybe that's the first thing you do is like, watch this, look at this guy, and then it might be a way of hooking them in. Is that what you're going to do?
Yeah. No, but it's I mean, in the
Or
trailer there's a hint of that,
Yeah.
but
Now, how long is the trailer?
5.
Yeah.
For the Sheffield one was 5 minutes, right, or something.
Oh, they're asking for 5 minutes. You're asking for 5 minutes.
Was it a
Doesn't matter.
5 minute? I can't.
Yeah,
Oh no, that
Sounds
was
long.
for I wanted to get one of those what's it called, Vulcan Foundation
Okay.
thing.
Yeah, for that kind of submission, it's okay, 5 minutes, maybe 6. But if
But
you,
I've got a 2-minute silent reel.
So you,
Yeah, because we had for the reel it had to be silent, right? Kind of. Yeah, and it was with subtitles of the diaries.
okay.
what you're saying, Khalid, is that it is acceptable that you, during the pitch of maybe 10 minutes, you spend 5, 6 minutes on showing your...
No, too long.
No, that you
No,
can't. You know, you
yeah,
do
yeah.
that in the beginning, before you meet.
Or if they're interested afterwards, then you send them the link. But now, we were talking about submission, if you're submitting. But if you're meeting someone for 10 minutes,
No, you can't.
you want to talk, you want to kind of engage them as much as possible outside of material, I think.
So how long should your
Yeah.
submission trailer be and how long should be
It
your
depends on the
pitch trailer
submission.
be? Yeah.
Depends on if you're asking for like some kind of promo, then 6 minutes, 8 minutes, even 10 minutes.
Yeah.
The more you show, the better. If you're trying to raise money to produce the film, if you're in post with it, you want to show a rough cut. If you're trying to get money for finishing.
I was told that your sizzler should be 2 minutes long.
Yeah, so if you're going to speak to someone,
Yeah.
like say 1 to 2 minutes.
Yeah,
What's like the gold in your material? What's the strongest kind of
yeah.
thing you've got?
If you're speaking to people.
Okay, yeah.
For the 2 minutes pitch,
No,
Yeah.
2-minute sizzler, a trailer,
The
which is
trailer,
basically
a teaser type of
teaser.
Yeah.
But maybe there's no rules, and that what you have to play it by ear. And what I
Take
hear
a
from
few
you
versions.
is you show that 2-minute thing, and they say this is really interesting, but we need more.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then you've got that
Yeah.
3-minute scene, which is so good
Yeah.
that doesn't have an overview, but particularizes, and you show them that.
Yeah.
You set up another meeting.
One of the best things also that I've seen is to go with an iPad rather than a laptop. Have the headphones ready. Have it all kind of ready for the person to watch. Because everyone, usually in the same room. It's kind of everyone's talking. You just have to open up a laptop and switch it on and then find the file. You're losing time now. If you've got an iPad, is good because it's just like a piece of paper, right? But your headphones, you say, put this on, let them watch it. If you're with your partner there, you can maybe discuss or check the reaction of the person.
You know, I think about something. You know, you have maybe a 5, 6, or even a 10 minutes train. So your notebook, everything is running already. You start showing it. After a minute, you switch off and say, that was it, you know. And then you got to switch off at the point. It's like you have a
Cliffhanger.
yeah. And then they want to see more.
The next suggestion, don't use the I.
Yeah.
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 That's a good idea. People don't.
They don't like you.
Sorry, I was to interrupt. Can I just swap out batteries real quickly?
Okay, so can I just apologize for being late? I have a very, very good reason. My dad had open heart surgery on Thursday. Yeah, he's in his 70s and he has German Shepherds who just had puppies. So I have to go and feed them, which is the morning and the evening thing, and then I stop at the hospital after. So I had to do that first because also today is the first day that he's actually been lucid after the surgery. And he actually smiled at me. And yesterday he was like, go away, I'm sleeping. so I had to do that. So I apologize for being late. I'm Anne Wenzel and I was related to the DFA about 10 years ago. And I made a couple of documentaries then. And I've started making documentaries again now because 10 years ago I stopped making documentaries when my kids were very little. And now my kids are much bigger because, you know, it eats you up. You know, you do this, there's no space, there's no time for anything else. So they're bigger now. And I'm a little bit freaked out by the fact that this room is very white and quite old. And I understand that documentary is a thinking, you know, kind of process. It's not, in some ways, as fun and whatever as fiction and feature film. But when I was active 10 years and more ago, there was a lot more color. There was a lot more women, and people were younger. So I'm concerned that I think the DFA, and I'm very aware that I'm coming in green almost, like I'm a new member because of what I'm part. But I think I need to say we because I'm a member now of them, need to work harder to pull in, you know, younger people in general, whatever color, but just younger people, younger energy, because they mix better in some ways than our generation was allowed to under, you know, the dispensation that we had. And then also women. And interesting enough, saying that, and being, you know, thinking being, I hope, as I'm saying that, and I'm looking at the room as I'm saying it, there are more women in this room than men. So that's also quite interesting because it used to be, you know, the reverse. So I don't know, maybe we can sit down and talk about it.
If you look at the whole delegation and people from Johannesburg, I would think that would meet your requirements. I don't know.
Maybe I should qualify by saying, yes, I was going to say maybe I should qualify by saying Western Cape, you know, because my experience is largely Western Cape. So when I say back then and now, more women especially, you know, and a lot more young black men. White men, I'm sorry to say, I expect them. Baggage. So it doesn't bother me to see them. In fact, it kind of bothers me to not see them, you know, because why are they not there? What is missing that they are not there? Because when they're there, it's happening. Things are being done. But I say that as a poll sample of one. I've not done any research. It's all my opinion. Just As a documentary maker, I have to put the facts on one side and the opinions on the other.
You must be an activist then.
Some days.
I think there's also a self-selection for market readiness. So some people with projects that aren't market ready, they're not here, they're busy, they've got to keep their lights on. It is unfortunate.
Yeah.
But I really applaud the Documentary Filmmakers Association for doing an upskilling and including other people who maybe aren't going for market this time but are going to be going in future. And I would
Like me.
encourage all your members to attend these, even if they're not going this year. It gets them understanding the shape of this market, how to prepare for this market versus other markets, and then get the experience of everyone in the room. Because sometimes you have to pitch for another person's project because you're meeting somebody and then you've got to make the introduction. So it's developing that hunting in a pack strategy by coming here. And a lot of that happens in the Encounters Film Festival. There's a lot of really good workshops, and they actually bring people from those markets. So it's a chance to encourage young people to go to that festival, which is maybe a little less intimidating than this, and people can plan for it a little better because it's 10 days. So I encourage you to do this. What you're describing is mentoring and developing capacity. And people that don't need this because they've done markets for years, like there's Paul at the end, he's 20 years on this one film that he's done and he's bringing it to sell. He might not attend all the market readiness because he knows markets, but because it's a requirement for the DTI to go to Sheffield, he's here. And we're benefiting from his and so many other esteemed people's experience. So this is it's like a real master class, this. So I just want to applaud, and I think your mentoring insight is so important. We all have to own that and develop the pack, because it's a huge world out there, and if people know quality documentaries are coming from South Africa, then it's going to make it easier for everyone. But if you didn't tell us about your documentary.
Oh, okay. So currently I'm working on something that is in some ways a lot less serious than any of the other documentaries I've made, because I'm kind of, it's a foot wetting. I mean, 10 years is a long time. So, and I just finished making my first fiction short film. So that was very interesting. Not having the framework of documentary, in a sense, because in fiction anything can happen. So all of a sudden I didn't have a framework. So a lot of things that I wouldn't have to think about, like continuity. What the hell is continuity? You go to someone's house, that's their house. You know, they're wearing what they're wearing. So all of a sudden it was just this whole dimension that opened up. So that was very interesting. And I'm working on another one, but so documentary, which is really what I really love. I'm speaking to a friend of mine who is a comedian, and she's about to embark on her first one-woman show. So we're going to document the process, because she's never done it, where she's looking for funders, she's looking for sponsors, and she's freaking out. But as so often happens in life, the younger generation of comedians is coming up, and they're doing it. So she's doing it in a kind of a reactionary way, and I want to capture all the reasons why she's doing it, as well as the doing of it. So that's going to be interesting, because to me, in my mind, that's kind of like, in a sense, a lifestyle documentary, because it's an ongoing event. It's not kind of something that has happened or is specifically focused around an event. It's more an event that is a start off for a number of different events. So, and now dealing with a creative personality is also a thing, because normally you do a documentary about someone and you're telling their story and they help you to tell their story, and now you deal with a creative and their mind is all over the place and they're thinking of all the different ways to do it. And I'm like, but in life, when you're doing something, you're just doing it. There's not a lot of variables, you know? So all that kind of focusing all that in is a challenge. And at the moment, I'm just shooting it myself, and we're going to look at sponsorship after, you know? So that's also an approach to documentary that I've never had. So it's a lot of news for me, as in new things, new ways of doing, and new ways of looking. And I'm also interested in integrating a lot of new ways of shooting it. I think that we've come a long way in how we shoot documentary generically, you know, in general. We do a lot of different things. We sometimes use a lot of film technique, which I think has made the medium of documentary so much richer, because also the audience does not stagnate. And the audience, when they're watching a documentary and when they're watching a film, they still want their reality to be suspended while they live that other reality. So that's also, I think, no, that is the most exciting thing for me about coming back into documentary, is the kind of new realism of how you present it. The standard format is dead. I'm sorry to say, but yeah, that's me.
Okay, cool. Just to finish off what we were talking about before when you're meeting, because I think that's one of the main things that's going to come out for you, or that you kind of need to be prepared for at Sheffield, are these quick meetings, these kind of 10-minute meetings. So Sheffield itself, as you probably know, is one of those festivals that is more geared towards the social impact films and stories. So there will be people who aren't necessarily filmmakers there, like the NGOs we were talking about, who might be interested in how they can help a project that has some kind of social impact space. And I think most of the, probably all of the films here can, in some way you can kind of spin it. Some are clearer than others, that they are linked that way. But all the others, in some way you can spin it that they do have this kind of social impact aspect. So the first thing, if you're going to have this what we call speed dating 10-minute thing, then you need to know who you're speaking to, right? So you'll probably get a list of the people, do a quick search on like what their basic background is, any kind of projects they're working on. If you have 2 projects, then you have a choice. You can pitch like one finished film, or you can pitch one that's in development, depending on who they are. Certain things you kind of need to get in place in the meeting initially is, like we said, your relationship to the story, what kind of film it is, like technically. Is it a 13-part documentary series? Is it a project in development, project in post? Like, where is it? Just so the person you're speaking to can have a kind of geographic grounding on what they're dealing with now, right? I mean, those are quite important. And then you've got to really know your story. You've got to know it so well that you can just tell the next person on the bus what the story is about. And if your story is very personal, if you've been working on it for many years, then you should be able to just drop it, you know, within 30 seconds, within a minute, what the idea is. If I'm being told that someone has been working on a project for 20 years, I would like to see some material, like what is the gold there, what's the early stuff, how does that look like? I'm not too worried about how that's all going to kind of come together in the edit, because it will, because there's always a way to take old material and place it together. But I'd like to see something, whether it's, I mean, trailers are always a little bit of I mean, people expect to see trailers, right? But it's a bit of a red herring, because it never really gives you a sense of the story. You know? I guess it does. It gives you a sense of part of the story, but then in 2 minutes, what can you say in a film that's going to be 2 hours long? Right? And then the other thing that I kind of, my own experience with these things I mean, they didn't all, obviously most of them didn't come to anything, you know. It was just practice for me to air my project and to get it out there. And it's kind of this airing, you know, of the project, so that next year, no doubt, especially if it's in development, when you're pitching it elsewhere, then you can gauge yourself how far it's moved, you know, and you will meet probably the same people, and they'll be like, and if you did get on in that meeting, if you kind of were yourself, and you made quite a nice relationship with that person, then it'll be a nice follow-up. But it's a long game, you know. It's like, why do we do this to ourselves year after year, you know? You just want to get the film made, but you have to go through these. You don't have to, I guess. If you can find all the money, then you don't have to speak to anyone. You just make the film. But we're not in that privilege.
Can you only, I know we were chatting about it before, but it's only for full feature length. Is it not worth going to festivals if you've got a shorter film?
Oh,
or maybe
like,
instead of 48 or 24.
No, it's worth it. I would say if you want to make, like, a TV hour is easier to sell, so you can make more money from it.
Yeah.
A feature-length film is maybe has more prestige or something like that, but it's harder to sell. Unless you say, look, we're making a feature-length and a TV version, we're definitely going to do that.
Or you can do, I would have thought, a 90-minute feature or 2 52-minute. It's a two-part documentary.
Yeah, or you can sell it like that. Usually the broadcasters will be looking for an hour slot. They're filling slots on their programming. And so their program goes alongside with what's trending, right? So they'll have like a week of, you know, films about Muslim women and the hijab, right? Because it's, you know, it's kind of fashionable, and we all want to see how Muslim women are subjugated in those far-off lands. So then you can make your film now, or the farm film. At the moment, I think it's quite topical. So if you spin it, like we were saying, depending who you're speaking to, then you could say it would be great for TV. I think.
It could go to a music channel as well as a film channel.
Yeah.
You know.
And
You spin it.
Yeah, I'm just scared of feature, you know.
that idea.
The idea of going so long, you know.
No, you can say it.
Yeah.
Say I'm doing a feature length and we're doing a TV. You don't. In the end, you don't have to make it.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
That
You
long.
make your, okay.
Yeah.
But you might get more funding if you say feature length. So you could get some funding from IDFA for the sizzle reel or the 15-minute tone reel. Because you're telling them, I'm going to do a feature length. And so they love those kinds of films.
Yeah.
So they fund you for your sizzle reel or this long tone reel. It's usually about 15 minutes they want for that fund. And then you just end up doing a TV length because you don't have the full story. They're not going to come back to you for the money.
So, can I just ask a question about
That's interesting.
TV length?
Yeah.
Normally, if you a TV hour is 56 minutes of program and 6 minutes of ads.
Yeah, it depends. It could be 48, 52.
52 is what
52, yeah,
I've seen for
Okay.
Europe.
Yeah.
So then this is my question. So do you actually make 60 minutes worth, or do you make
No.
52 minutes worth to go into a 60-minute slot?
52 is Americans, you know, it's American time.
But it's also
48 is in
European.
South Africa.
Too.
52, not 40.
My co-producer on this one thing has got a filmography of like 10 or 12 things that she produced last year. They're all 52 minutes.
Really?
If you do get to that stage where there's a contract on the table and the broadcaster is saying, we're going to give you the money to make this film, there'll be a length, and you've got to stick to that length.
Okay.
So whether it's 52 usually, or less or more.
Okay.
So you don't have to take your 72-minute, you know,
Yeah, but if you're at a festival,
At a
the
festival.
circuit is about these kind of long films.
Yes, yes.
But a feature length is what, 60 minutes or over. So it's not much in it.
Not much difference.
What about shorts? You see, that's the thing. Shorts are modern.
Sorry.
They're modern. He's shaking his head. He's the youngest person in the room, except maybe for that guy, and he's going yes. And he's the only one here going yes. And
No,
that's
I was going
Oh, okay.
because
Sorry,
it's
outside my
actually
peripheral
it's
vision.
also
Yes.
the new distribution. So you're in the fourth
Yeah.
industrial revolution, and all
Exactly.
I mean,
Because
there's
also
there's new screens
on- yeah.
everywhere.
on here, it's harder for me to watch 90 minutes on here and download 90 minutes and spend my data on 90 minutes. But on a short, I can.
Yeah.
And when I look also at some of the smaller, more indie festivals, and it always starts with the indie guys,
Yes.
they're calling more and more for shorts. So they have shorts and they have shorts. But I don't see it here. And by here, I don't mean
No, but in the market,
the short shorts.
if you go to the markets like Sheffield or Berlin or Hot Dogs, they're looking for the longer films. They do have, but it's a market, right? So there are different people buying and selling different stuff. So if you can find a list of delegates, and you find the guys who buy short films, then you go for them.
Yeah, but,
So
but
you
not
can
short
go-
films, shorts.
Shorts, yeah. Also, I mean,
And Encounters brings The Guardian. I mean, that's all a short film
Yeah.
thing. That's 7 minutes or 10 minutes.
Yeah.
No.
Not short films.
Yeah.
Shorts. Short shorts are 2 minutes or less. Shorts.
Okay.
Yeah.
well, I would say go with like a series.
Okay.
And go sell like a series. But it needs to be,
Yeah. Okay.
same thing applies, you know, your relationship, what's it about, you know, what's the kind of punchline, I guess, of all these things, because you've got to,
Yeah. And can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
Are we, as a group, the people sitting here, are we investigating, playing with, considering the cell phone forms?
yeah, I guess it's up to you how you want to.
Why only cell phone?
Yeah.
Cell phone, because I think that the internet provides all kinds of distribution outlets.
Yeah.
And in drama series, quite dramatically, there was a series called Blue, which was made about 12-minute episodes. And there are all kinds of things which I think are possible. And the big advantage is that you can make that short very cheaply, and get it out, get interest, and then maybe go on to a short or a feature based on that.
As far as membership goes, I think Roger Horn's working in this area quite a lot, around migrancy. And then the other people who are doing a lot is Coloured Mentality, Kelly Eve Cookman and Sarah Summers. They're doing a lot of work in that area as well.
But it's going to happen more
But
and more.
it's a series.
I don't think you need to go to the bigger festivals per se, although you'll see thought leader panels on these subjects.
Yeah.
Because it's the disruption.
Yeah.
You know, this is the new screen. We're going to have self-driving cars. We're going to have TV screens in our cars instead of looking out the window. There's an explosion of screens and they need content. That's why HBO needed 1 series a year, and now they need 14. Because there's just so many different formats and different audiences, and it's specialists, niche specialists.
Yeah.
But it still comes down to, like concept and like the intrigue of it. You know, just because they're a minute-long films, 10 of them shot on cell phones.
Yeah.
But, okay,
for
yeah,
sure.
but what's the
Because it
concept?
could be rubbish.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
If it's about, I guess migrant roots has been done, right? This kind of immigrant roots, not immigrant roots, like migrant roots from Syria. Loads of films about people leaving Syria going to Europe. Loads of them, short film, long film, in very fashionable also because it's a terrible situation. But so it comes down to like, what's the concept now? It could be very cool if you say, look, I've got 10 short films and they're all dealing with like this amazing subject or experience, and they're all shot on phones. I mean, the shooting on the phone thing is not really exciting anymore, I don't think, unless you are showing something, you're doing something more with it. Like this film that Jenna
High
Bass
fantasy,
made.
yeah.
Brilliant.
So it's all shot on cell phones. Okay, so what? Well, the actors are shooting themselves. The actors are all the DPs in the film. And you're like, oh, that's interesting now. There's no one DP that all the actors in the film are shooting themselves. Okay, it's all on phones.
Aren't media so cheap now that, why limit yourself by shooting on a cell phone? There was a review of Steven Soderbergh's latest feature, which they say looks terrible because it's got so badly the resolution of even 4K cell phones. It's still not as good as a 4K stills camera or whatever. So I don't think there's any huge value necessarily in it per se.
Unless you can get to a place where you wouldn't get to
sure.
if you.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really the content, not the.
Then it's different.
Not the support.
Yeah.
The
But he
content.
surely must have wanted that rough look, because high
Yes.
fantasy is
Yeah.
something that's seen
Yeah.
on huge
Yes.
screens.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they really did just shoot it on these.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to add to
iPhone
that,
7's
Yeah, but back to the pitching, it's not a general discussion, I think. We are here together because of the pitch, mainly because of the pitching side. And everybody here is here just because it's a little bit difficult to pitch,
Yes.
I mean, I maybe already attend, and Peter, just some other people, attend the 4th or the 5th pitching session, And I still have a problem, because the more you know about your product, if it's the more you know, you can't condense it to a minute or 2 or 3, There's some saying as well. Saying is, sorry, the synopsis is so long, but I didn't have the time to make it short, And that's the essence of everything. And I'm here just to find out how, because I'm myself getting carried away. And after an hour, I'm still not coming to the point. That is,
But I think Khalid was just going through it.
Yeah,
10 minutes, the
exactly.
intro to self, the relationship to the subject, where is it, give them the map, what is it, give them the structure, and then go into the story very quickly.
Yeah, or
And
like,
forward
depending
with
on
it,
the
but-
combination.
Yeah, but those are your main
Yeah.
points, I
Yeah,
think.
and I think one important thing is if you can, anytime within the story, make someone laugh, then do it, wherever you can.
Yeah.
Because, we all know why. But it helps just to,
I think an important point is looking in somebody's eyes, not looking somewhere else.
yeah, I don't know, I mean, depends on your, if you're like crazy guy who can't look in the eye, maybe you're more interesting than the person who's in my face the whole time. Maybe I want to look away.
Yeah.
Show me something.
Yeah.
In certain parts of Nigeria, it's a sign of respect. Like speaking to an elder, you don't,
Yeah, so if you're pitching your 1 minute series to a Nigerian
Elder.
Nollywood elder broadcaster, looking in the
that'll
eye.
work.
And maybe what is the point, because I was once a judge at the film school. They were pitching their projects, but nobody from out of 20 students gave a free speech, a free pitch. They were all reading from a book. And I thought, this is very sad. No, you got to know your story. We got to know our story so very much that we don't have to look it up and read off a book. I think that's my feeling. That's the way I see it. But what do you see? Just
Sure.
Yeah.
Elevator pitch.
That's why I was saying if you need to know your,
Yeah.
which comes back to like your own integrity with the story anyway. If you have that integrity, which everyone has here, then you'll know your story well enough to tell someone without having to read it. Because I want to, as a funder, I want to trust that if I give you the money, you're going to make the film. Whether it's amazing or bad is a kind of another thing. It's a different conversation, but I want to trust that you'll make the film. That I won't give you the money and it doesn't materialize. So if you're reading off the paper, I'm kind of not really trusting that you're going to make this thing. It kind of comes down to trust. So how do you in your daily life, get that out of someone? So.
I was just thinking that maybe people will find it useful. I offer this tentatively. But when we teach drama, we talk about a controlling idea. And if you express a log line, it starts with an inciting incident and human values. One is called a movement value and one is called a fulfillment value. So you say, when a reclusive young man discovers that an island is being destroyed by whatever, he takes on a journey which he doesn't realize is going to change his life before he succeeds objectively in changing the island, but in so doing he perhaps resolves an internal problem or something like that. That you have an internal subjective story for the person, objective story, what they're stimulated to do, a process by which they get there, and an inciting incident or something which triggers the process. And I think I try and do it in dramas, and in dramas definitely be in documentary as well. It's a way of being quite concise, I think. And it gives people a strong sense, because ultimately I think people go to movies, documentaries, or dramas to have an emotional experience, and it's about emotional human values which are dealt with in the process. And I think, and for what it's worth, I find it helpful, and it helps you compress, because when you get students pitching, so all too often they start, well, there's this guy and this and this and this, telling you what the film is about. So,
what did you say? Movement and?
Movement and fulfillment. And the movement is, for example, Braveheart. If you have a controlling idea which it says, for freedom to triumph, people must be prepared to sacrifice everything. That tells you what it's about. It illustrates the message, the lesson of the documentary, or the social impact, or whatever. So I think that's quite nice in the sense that it implies something that happens, someone sacrificing, and achievement of the value. So, and I think when I look at documentaries, I try to look at them in that way. And I think it's what allows you to, at least as a corrective, to getting caught up in telling the story and not getting to the point of what's it about.
It's like the arc.
Yes, absolutely. Arc of the character and the arc of the story. And there's an internal, if you think about it, sorry, I'm sounding like I'm teaching, but we think about it as an objective story and a subjective story, the internal journey and the external journey. And that it's about character and it's about change and how people are motivated. I think in every documentary that's worth telling, other than very just literal documentary about facts.
Okay, cool. So do you want to talk more about this, or do you want to, I mean, Liesl, what do you want to do?
So we've got some time allocated to go through marketing materials. Just your thoughts are on that.
Yeah.
So if you want to move over to that area, you can.
But just one question.
Yeah.
When you say instead of a teaser,
Yeah.
a scene, how long would you reckon that scene, and
Not
would that
long.
scene be cut, or would it be rushes, or just?
It depends what you have. I mean, if you're talking about your film that's now in edit, I would like to see a kind of an edited scene that's whatever, at most 2 minutes, maybe a minute and a half, that shows me what is the kind of nugget of the whole film. What's or for you, what is it? You know, what's that main heart of the film? If you're in development, if you've got early development and you with these GOM kids, then what is it? You know, I might, you know, if I just see some kids making the music and dancing, maybe, yeah, it's interesting because the dance also goes with the music, isn't it? It's kind of interesting. But maybe I want to know something more, right? What is it in the raw footage that shows me you have connection with as a filmmaker, connection with these people, and a good understanding of not just the music, because there are many films about music coming from subcultures, and quite a few people are making these films about, there's a few films that talk about the origin of GOM. Who is it? You know, lag, or is it this one, or is it other one? So you're kind of in competition with those other films, you know. So it depends where you're at. If you're telling me I'm in post with my film, then I want to see a scene. If you're telling me I'm in development, then maybe show me a character or something.
How about like a sort of, it's a trailer, but it's off of resources that you get online?
Yeah, from online with your guys in it.
Yeah. Sort of like talking to it, you use sort of blackboards to kind of relay the story and the sort of your idea behind it.
Yeah. I mean, what you could do, if you have the space with this kind of film, is start to play the music, because there's not much dialogue
Yeah, yes.
and then tell your story over it, maybe.
That's
Maybe
cool,
show
actually.
like a couple of still, or some kids dancing to the music that goes on for 2 minutes, and you talk your story over it. You know, you do it in a different way then. But then the sound issues,
There's
it
also-
depends on the space you're in. But if you don't have to play it loud, but you say, look, this music is blowing up. The young kids are like, you know, in France, they don't know where this music's coming from, but they're loving it and the thing. And it came out of the southern tip of Africa in Durban, and various people are claiming the origin of it. So there's this battle for, you know, who the gong king is, you know. Then you kind of maybe can talk over. Maybe, yeah, maybe that's it. Find a different way of showing your story to whoever you're talking to. Yeah.
I think that's the most liberating thing that you've said, is that if one has already shot a bit and you're overwhelmed by the volume of material, to pick a scene or two which is editable fairly quickly, and especially if there's some humor in it.
Yeah.
Because that's what engages people. I find that very valuable. Thank you.
Yeah, I can tell you that the festivals don't want to see a sizzle reel when they're looking at a project getting close to post. They really want to see a tone scene, something that sets the tone. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but it does have to show your vision and the kind of color of the whole, your story needs to be embedded in it. It could be like 1 minute with a bit of humor and your character. That's like, that's number
If you
one.
see that film, The Act of Killing, so that it opens with this big kind of fish structure, it's kind of abstract kind of image, and then these characters are dancing next to a waterfall or something, and then these are the killers in this regime that the story is about to tell. So it's immediate, you're like kind of this juxtaposition kind of draws you in to want to know more about this kind of strange and horrible place, you know. So, you know, what it sounds like from the island, I want to see that. You know, I immediately think of the Last Jedi film, where she goes down into that hole in the island. Have you seen it? Okay, you see it. Good reference.
Yeah.
Luke Skywalker is stuck on an island. He exiled himself to this island.
Okay.
You know? Maybe you are the Princess Leia to your brother.
Well, he does go down. He actually hides his booze down the
Oh, really?
So that, and then he goes and vows to bank her up, which is this other feature. He says, "I'm not going to touch anything for the next 15 days until Christmas." And he's like gone and hidden the stuff down there. And to get there, he has to sort of have a reasonable day where you can actually go inside the island, because it's wild. It's this South Atlantic.
So if you were to show that scene, like if you were to show that scene in a minute and a half, and then tell me, this guy's been living here for 20 years, and that's the film, then I'd be like, whoa, I want to see how do you, it's not just one person's visit to the island and then he does this thing. He's been, you know, Robinson Crusoe himself.
He was, yeah. Listen, he was employed, eh? It wasn't just just to put everybody's mind at rest. He was employed by Nature Conservation
To be there.
To be there,
Right.
but it was his mission. He volunteered.
Yeah, don't say that he was employed to be there. Say he put himself there.
He put himself there. Yeah.
Right. Anything else? Anyone else? We can talk about anything in terms of that. And I'm only talking about my experience with that person across the table, you know, and how to. It wasn't always successful for me, and I'm kind of still probably going to try and do it myself. But it is just. I think the most important thing is that it's a way of just airing your film for yourself, right? Rather than having to impress all these other people, you know, that most of them are going to say no anyway. It's more for you to just, you know how therapy works, isn't it? It's like that.
But is it, excuse me, I was just going to ask about leave behinds. Like, is it a card? Are you doing that anymore in this industry, or what's your leave behind theory?
People do. I don't. I kind of don't really believe in them for myself. I like to see people's cards and to have them and look at them if I want to, you know, see how creative they are around there. But I don't like having my own cards. My belief is if they want to get in touch, then they'll get in touch, or they'll take my number down and they will contact.
Because in fiction, there, you know, it's like a one-page A5, and
Right, yeah, you
it's
can do
got
that.
the whole sort of
That's useful, yeah. It's
tone
nice.
thing on it.
If
And
it's a
the
beautiful
drama.
image I want to put on my fridge, then do that. You know, if you have a nice image that someone's
Is
going to take.
anybody
note.
doing that here? Does anybody have leave behinds prepared to show?
Not yet.
Well, I'd just say with fiction, I've certainly done A4s and the smaller one, A5, which you hand out. But the one thing that we were told at other pitches is don't show them your visual material or handouts until the end of the pitch, because they're going to start looking at that and not listen to you, which is really useful advice. Because, and the same with cards, I think, perhaps give them the card at the end, I don't know. But they always tends to do, everyone exchanges cards at the beginning.
I do give people a business card, which is slightly creative, because I do also believe that if I give them something else visual, they're looking at it and they're judging it on what they can see, bringing whatever is in their own heads to that picture before they've heard, you know, what you're bringing with that picture. So then it seems to me like it's a fait accompli. You've helped them to shut you out, you know. But I do also, my experience from before was that if I left something, because a lot of these people that you're speaking to, they're administrators and they're financiers. They're not creatives. They want you to leave something with them. And like you said, it's good if you make them laugh. You've got to find something where you stick so that the business card, or whatever you leave, it's easier for them to come back to it. But I do agree, it mustn't have too much visual about what you're actually doing.
But the problem with those cards I've always found, and doing the A5 stuff, I did at some point. I was doing them, like, it just takes a lot of time.
It
And then you don't want to pay money you don't have to a designer to do it. You want to try and do it yourself. You're not really very good, or you're kind of okay, and kind of falls a bit flat. For me, maybe it's just me. I'm not being very good at it. So I just felt I was stuck with all these pile of paper about myself, and it was like, look, if they're into the film, they'll be into the film. So,
but aren't we all getting pages? We had to put together information for a brochure.
yes.
So we could ask DFA to print those pages for us separately and pay them a little bit of money for the printing. And then without any effort, it's been professionally put together. Of course, they all look a bit the same, but in format, but at least we've got that material to hand out if we want.
So that'll be available, and you know, people can have a browse and say, oh, I want to meet with this person.
Yes.
You know, can you hook me up with that person? And they can arrange that. Or you can say, you know, this is my project in the booklet.
Yes.
You know, I can send it to you separately or follow up.
Okay.
However it works for you.
Just want to say, in pitching sessions, I'm a particularly bad speaker and get incredibly nervous and shy and just forget the whole subject. So I've always found it's like better to have a good promo and also let the characters I'm going to speak, because I'm never going to capture their charm or charisma or whatever I'm trying to sell in those 7 minutes of sort of fumbling through, you know, the sort of amnesia that I seem to go through. And you know, I just never managed to do it in that time. You know, you sort of like stuck there, you know, and it's sort of blackout. So I'd always rather rely on this, and then they can at least see some filmmaking, some.
I would say that. Tell the guy, say, look, I'm not.
I do
this.
actually. That's why I can't even remember my name. Yeah.
Well,
I don't know what it's about.
No, but you've got to say also. But you also have to say, but I'm a bloody good filmmaker, and I'm going to make this film, and I just can't. I'm not very good at this kind of pitching thing. I want to show you something, you know.
I actually once one with the, you know, in the mic on the stage, and I started off this rambling. It wasn't even about what the film was about. And then I could see it was like faces, and they were like trying to help me. And I was like, window, dog, and it's like everyone was going. They felt so sorry for me, like this, and then they sort of like came up to me afterwards. I was like, "Can I show you something?" You know, and it was. I think it was so bad that it actually worked in my favour.
Yeah.
They actually thought I was like brain damaged, actually.
Because there's some genius attached to that.
Yeah, they just thought, oh my God, we've never seen anything so dreadful in our lives. You know, I just couldn't even talk in. I was looking like this. I just couldn't remember what the film was about.
So, but they'll remember you next year, you know.
It was so disastrous they actually even wrote to me.
Oh, really?
Like to say to help me through.
Oh.
You know, it was like that bad. They thought
Well,
I
what
actually
happened to
had
the
some-
film? Did the film get made?
No,
Oh.
but they were very interested. Actually, it was like even head of art and everything.
Right.
But it was just the time I needed to do more on it, and I just like lost interest. But I mean, they were that interested because they felt so sorry for me.
Oh.
That's a new
That's
strategy.
good.
I think that it's good to actually learn what you're going to say
Yeah.
so well
Absolutely.
that you actually can say it spontaneously, quote unquote.
Mm.
And you know that you're not going to stray because I'm
Exactly.
such an insecure person in some ways that if people look at me encouragingly, I start expanding and getting caught up with my wonderful project, and suddenly time's up and I didn't actually get to the point. So having that discipline of kind of knowing more or less what you want to say and having thought it through and practiced it
Yeah.
and written it out and learned it off by heart is a very good way, at least, of, because the worst thing is people just read and keep the notes with you, at least I do, just for like a security blanket, that it's there, that I might glance down once or twice and nobody minds that, but if you just read it, it's terrible.
Yeah.
But you're going to be doing that anyway with, you know, wandering around the festival, you'll go to a stall and you'll bump into someone and they're from Argentina. First thing, the conversation is about like, what are you doing here? What film do you have? And then you're elaborating on your project. So it's kind of like, maybe those connections become more important than the roundtable. You know?
I mean, can I just ask, I'm not going to Sheffield, but just on managing expectations, do you, like for you, have you gone to several, have you come back from a festival and you've really got a couple of bites but nothing solid?
Yeah, yeah.
Then you go to another festival and try and, but
Yeah.
it's time consuming.
Yeah.
Is that really how it goes? I mean, can you often
Well,
have a few festivals before you get a bite?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I mean, I have to take into consideration, right, I'm going to go there for a week, so I'm not working for a week.
That's
Like, where's how, got to make it worthwhile.
yeah.
Maybe nothing comes from it. I have to have the belief that, yes, something will come, but, you know, what is it? You hope for the best, but you expect the worst. Right?
And you have to write a report to DTI afterwards, to the DFA,
Oh, okay.
saying what meetings, this is important I think, saying what meetings you attended, what you did, what business you accomplished, who you met. So I mean, apart from keeping notes of it, it's kind of, look, there's some people, I think a few, very few, who just go and have a jaw, and that's important too, but they just have a jaw, they don't, and then they have to thumbs up something. So I do think one has to be systematic.
Yeah, and those reports can help the DFA help more members get better meetings next festival. So do make it a comprehensive, then so-and-so, they're interested in this kind of thing. We chatted about my project, but it wasn't quite a good match, but they made a good relationship, and I encourage anybody with projects in that area to meet this person because they're a decision maker.
And one can even, I mean, I have done a little bit, but is do a spreadsheet on Excel, who it is you met, what you discussed. And I do remember 5 years later, I had made notes in an old diary, and I phoned up an American Hollywood agent about, and I'd been introduced to her, and nothing came of it. And then we chatted and I said, do you remember me? She said, vaguely. She said, oh no, I remember you because of this, this, and this. And she said, oh wow, you remember all that? I remember because I had made notes in this little black book, but she became my agent for a bit. She was very impressed by the fact that I had remembered, which is basically that I hadn't, but I had made notes to help me, so I had in a way. But I think that if one is systematic in the way one organizes those resources, because I've got a terrible memory, otherwise I forget.
Diana Keem, who isn't here, but she was on the SWIFT delegation that went to Berlinale recently. She was like, I'm doing this 150% every single event she went to, everything, speed dating, she did everything. And then in between the 2 speed dates, she got to chatting to the person next to her who's now her co-producer. So you kind of need to be in the space of, I'm open to it, but it might just be someone next to you. Jackie Lawrence found her co-producer on a film. She was late to go to a docu at ITFA, and the other lady was late, and they were trying to get in, and then couldn't get in, so they went for a drink, and now they're working together. You know, serendipity comes to those who are prepared.
Yeah. Be curious, be happy. Nobody wants to walk next to somebody grumbling. But if you make it a jokey grumble, like, darn, I couldn't get in, then they remember you. Yeah, they want to work with you. You know, be at your best behavior. Don't go, oh, I'm so tired, this is such hard work. I mean, come on, you're there for a week, you're giving up paid to go there.
Don't say, why are we in Sheffield of all places? Why not in London?
No, be excited. And it is a great festival. A lot of South Africans have done very well there. The fracking documentary won the top documentary. Was it last year already, or 2 years ago?
Before.
Yeah.
It was Chris Nicklin.
3 years ago.
No, it's
Yeah,
Jordan,
Jordan. And she won the best documentary of the whole festival. You need to know some of that history a little bit so that you can go, yeah, well, South African DFA member won best documentary here. And so on.
Was that at Sheffield?
Yeah,
Yeah, Sheffield, yeah.
Aliki was there last year with her film Striker Rock.
And got into competition. Did they win a prize?
They were competition? No.
Okay, but still, that's a really good thing because it's very competitive.
And from there she got into ITFA because she won at Encounters.
Yeah, she did.
In Durban. And, so.
And it's a great film, counterpoint to Rehad's film as well because it's more
But
feminine.
she went on, she's interesting because she went on a big, she did the Good Pitch Kenya, and then it's all about the social impact. Then she had to get an impact producer to manage the whole, what do you call it, outreach of the film after the film. And then Sheffield, they're into that.
Yeah.
And Good Pitch is like a UK thing, so BritDoc thing, so they were, I guess it helped in some way.
Yeah.
Now she's off with the film and pushing it and screening everywhere.
Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah.
Really?
That's why it's so good.
She was so worried about it.
Yeah, she was worried. I saved the film.
But you're also going there as an editor, and you could be picking up international docus because people like your style. So you're marketing yourself as an editor as well, right? When
I'm not going to Sheffield.
Oh,
when
no,
I
no,
go,
you're not. But when you do go,
no,
does that ever happen?
I go with my film
Okay.
to the Libya film to try and push it, to raise money for it or whatever. Yeah, the conversation always ends up being, I've been making this film for a number of years, but I prefer, my main thing is editing, which helps with not necessarily funders, but with possible co-producers to say, oh, here's someone who might have an understanding of structuring quite a complex personal and political, historical story. So there's some trust there that happens, you know. If you say, you know, I cut some films that were at this festival, that festival, and they've actually heard of the films, then it's like, okay, let's have a conversation, you know.
Who shoots your films?
Oh, this one now.
Yeah.
Few people, someone I've worked with in London. Well, most of it's shot in the UK, and some stuff here. Nick Hoffman has shot some stuff, and various people. But it's mostly archived. Actually, 65% of the film is archived.
That must be expensive.
You'll see. Yeah, probably will be.
What format? Archive.
The archive, various. Okay, so the film is from the 70s, the kind of historical story. My dad was exiled, and then I was born in 75. So then, during the 80s, he became he formed the major opposition to Gaddafi in exile with some other exiled Libyans, and then that's when Gaddafi was the big dictator of the time, and he was taking out all his opponents, home and abroad. So So my dad was on the list, and his friends, some of his friends were killed, and we went in hiding for a certain number of months, and he was working with MI6, and his friends in America were working with the CIA and he organized armed warfare, small armies in Chad and Algeria to take out Gaddafi, and they failed. This was the 80s, so I was growing up in London at that time, kind of not really knowing about this thing, and being told, don't say you're Libyan, finding like a bulletproof vest in my dad's cupboard and stuff like that. So he was on TV a lot in the 80s, because he was kind of the media wing of this organization, and he would always be in silhouette, in shadow, and during his time in the front, and then only when he left the front in the 90s, it became satellite television, and he was on Al Jazeera, and he was not in shadow anymore, and then the internet, and he started a website. So the formats change over the years, and then during the revolution, it's lots of what do you call it? This thingy journalism inside. Citizen journalism. So revolutionaries in the war shooting stuff themselves. I obviously didn't go there during that time. And then it's stuff I shot in Libya with him and in London after kind of uncovering all of this past, which I didn't really know about as a youth. So it's very mixed, lots of mixed formats.
What's happening?
I think it's the tribal dances.
Busking.
Oh, okay.
Maybe that's a good time to break for lunch. I'm not sure when you're
Oh.
for lunch.
Yeah, what are you guys all doing? Do you want to have a...
Let's go to the It's 12:20.
Do you want to break now?
Shall we have a lunch break?
I don't think it's finished.
No.
Can you hear? Can you hear? What is
Yeah. I think we should go on until 1 and then just talk about, if we can look at your, well, we were going to talk about this proposal funding for foreign funding, proposal writing, so I don't know, let's go through it. I mean, okay, unless you want to talk more about other stuff. So you can all probably add to this, but this is, firstly, the list of funding for African films that's outside of the continent that's available. So you got Hot Docs, Blue Ice Fund, was I think originated by 2 South African guys who were in Canada. So they very nicely put a chunk of money to Africa. It's not just Africa, it's the East. It was African
No,
films.
it's African. It's
Okay.
working in Africa.
Right. So you can typically get between 5,000 and 15,000 Canadian dollars. So you're aiming at like 10 grand, yeah? Which is nice, 150K.
And they fly you there.
They'll fly you there for the festival, which is just happened now at end of April, and you'll do a very nice workshop, maybe 5 different projects from around the continent, and you work with mainly American consultants or mentors, if you want to call them. So there's like editors there are filmmakers who have strong links with Sundance, there are producers with all those kind of strong links in the US, and like high-level practitioners. And you spend like 5 days like workshopping your project, usually in development stage, and you're workshopping what the project's about. Really useful and really good to kind of talk about the stuff. It's very often this, my experience is it's very much an American way of making films. So like, where's the drama? Not so much the social impact, but like drama, right? Maybe you don't want to make a film like that. Maybe you want to make a film that's slower also. It can have drama if it's slower. But they like that kind of punchy. Their idea of good coffee is Starbucks, so not so great. It's an important point, because they were very excited. Oh, the Starbucks, the real coffee has come. And I was like, yeah, where? It was this box of Starbucks, the tap. Like, anyway, that's, if you don't like that, don't go. Take the money, don't go. So hot dog, it's a good fun.
But then they fly you to Durban
They'll fly you there, and they'll fly you also to Durban for
6 weeks
the
later,
market.
and they want to see that you've done something with their advice.
Yeah.
You might have ignored it. You don't have to do it. You can take the money,
Yeah.
but you do have to attend both festivals.
Yes.
So it is a chunk of time.
Yeah, they support you. They support you, and you make good relationships with, like, Andy Young now, was the guy. He works with them. He was, when we were there in 2014. He was one of the mentors, and I still have a good relationship with him. And if I have a rough cut, I'll send him. And he's great. Andy's great.
And you might find a co-producer from Canada, and then you qualify for production funding and stuff. So it's
Yes.
important to go to Canada because there's actually a lot of soft funding
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
if
And
it's
you'll see
big.
lots of great films, and you'll get an idea of what's, what the kind of current trends in films are, filmmaking, I guess. It's very inspiring. It's really nice.
And they tend to like to then curate their films from their previous
Yeah.
mentees.
Yes.
So, I mean, Simon Wood, he wasn't in the class, as it were, but
Yeah.
he got one short film, and now every film is hot dogs,
Yeah, yeah,
hot
so
dogs,
they'll-
hot dogs for premieres.
And
They love
we
it.
have a co-production treaty with Canada too.
The first
Yes. I don't know much.
handpicked a few projects that were floating that need co-production, and those are being mentored, again, with some of these guys from the fund, the Hot Dogs Fund, but around Toronto. So it's TV fiction, and there's so little money for development, so it's important to know that when you're developing a co-production, you need a lot more development, especially around the legal stuff. So
Yeah.
it's a really good initiative, and now it'll become clear, and there will be a year in advance call out going forward. They haven't done it officially, they just handpicked a few projects to pilot it.
Yeah. They need to see material. They always want to see something. So just be clear about what it is you're showing. I wouldn't say, if you're developing a film, I wouldn't say, here's the trailer for my film, because the film's not made yet, and it's going to change. If you say, here's some promotional material that I have, or I don't like the kind of sizzle term, but if you say, here's a scene, here's a character, kind of, look at this character, or here are some selects, it's better. So Hot Dogs, yeah, is a good one. It's very competitive. So each year you kind of, if you look at the list and how much they're getting for what, it feels like it's less and less every year, but that's, I think everywhere is like that. But it's a good one. Hot dogs. So you have Doha, as I mentioned. Also now very competitive because there's less and less funding in the Middle East for media films. It for Bertha is a good one. They don't give much money at all. It's like maybe 5,000 euros. They have a deadline now in May, I think, 15th of May.
What is their kind of profile? Would a film like
They're looking
mine,
for creative documentary.
creative documentary? So,
You could spin it.
because I've got that on my radar, but I keep on thinking that it's not sort of political enough. Or,
No, they'd love that.
No, it doesn't
No, I
have to
think
be
they'll
political.
like it.
They're just looking for like new, good voices. Good.
Doesn't it also work that once you've got one bit of funding, it makes it easier
It
to
should
get
help,
others?
yeah.
It gives you a credibility.
It's trust.
Yeah.
You know, if Hot Dogs guys know that ITFA gave you money, right, then let's maybe give them. But it doesn't always work like that. I got a few funds, but ITFA I applied like 3 times and they never gave it. So, but they don't give much money, but it's kind of prestigious. It's nice to have ITFA on board. It's nice to know that if the film is finished, there's a strong likelihood of it showing there. But it's not about that. It's not about the premiere, it's about the film. So World Cinema Fund, this German, what's the World Cinema Fund? It's linked to
Berlin.
to Berlin, yes. So ITFA is basically Africa and the East, isn't it? So it's hectically competitive.
World Cinema Fund is
World.
world.
Yes.
And it does documentary. But you only get one bite of World Cinema Fund.
You also need a German co-producer, I think, for
I
that,
think you're right.
for World Cinema Fund.
But they'll help you find it.
Yeah.
So you can get advice before you apply, and
Yeah.
they say, and you'll write and say, I don't have a German producer
Who do
yet.
you recommend?
They might recommend somebody.
So whoever, if you don't know about this co-producing thing, probably most of you do, but anyone who doesn't, it means that the money which comes from a certain country and your co-producers from that country, most of it or a portion of it has to be spent in that country, right? So if you're making a film about Germany, or your grandfather who's in Germany or whatever, then you're shooting there, fine. Or if you're making a fiction film and your cast is from there, your DOP or whatever, usually it ends up being the post-production is spent there. So your edit is there, or your mix and grade and stuff is done in Germany.
My little experience of something which did in fact fall through with a really nice Dutch co-producer was that everything was twice as much, cost twice as much. They pay editors, and a DOP would get 45,000 rand a week.
Right.
And the producer wanted to be paid a lot. We had to have a Dutch camera person, a Dutch editor. Post had to be in Holland, Netherlands. He had to be partly involved, and it inflated the budget hugely. So that's a negative, because in South Africa you can get someone to shoot for maybe, if they like your project, a third of that, an editor for a
But
third.
can I just say, it can be worth it. Mark Schwinges just finished the Dutch co-production. It was a natural co-production. They didn't have to force it. The story came from an ex-Dutch person who lived and grew up here, and it was a traveling story about growing up. Is she a racist or not? Because she grew up here and so on. She's quite a reflective person. But now that his company officially co-produced with a Dutch person, they are automatically getting production money for their next one, whatever they choose.
Oh, really?
So it doesn't have to be with that person anymore.
What is a
And then
Dutch?
they can go.
Yeah. What's a Dutch funding company called again?
Well,
The ITVA, just in Holland.
well, it was a film festival, but there's Holland Film.
No. Yeah. When you ask for co-production here, your minimum value or just budget must exceed 200,000 euros.
And that can be, especially if it's a traveling documentary with a lot
That's
of
quite
animation.
important.
But just to put it in perspective, they're also going to get distribution in Holland, and that's a return on your budget. So you're going to get pre-sales out of being in co-production. So I'm just saying, it might be expensive, it might inflate your budget, but there are checks and balances. And Mark Schwinges, who's a member of the DFA, he reflects on this story in public, so it's not secret. He's really pleased, and not many people have done it, but it can be worthwhile. And when you look at the bigger companies doing feature films and feature documentary, they start moving to co-production budget level. In fiction, I'm told anything less than 22 million rand, it's not worth it. But other people have done it for 16 million rand in fiction and said, yeah, it was a lot of work, I'll never do it for that low budget again, but I needed the education. I financed, myself. So these are big budgets for a reason, but in documentary, obviously, it's a lot less, but it's still worthwhile.
Just keep in mind that the co-production, the minimum threshold for budget would be, to use the rebate, would be 2.5 million.
Yeah.
But they allow you a smaller budget of minimum 500 if it's a documentary. So they do recognize that a documentary budget would be lower. However, for the co-pro, you're looking at the over 2.5.
I think we also need to change our thinking,
range.
because we think very small here. And I remember, again, something didn't happen, but I got to speak to someone at Channel 4 on a series. She'd seen something that she liked, and we talked the budget. She said, your budget's reasonable. I said, oh, great. Not too high. She said, no. So many. And she was talking pounds. And I was talking rands. So I realized, I said, I didn't say anything, but I just gave me a sense of our thinking is so limited that what, obviously they charge 3 times as much, but we do make things on a shoestring here.
And they're putting real money into sound, like ambient sound has to be kept at all times, and people just do ADR at the end and clean up bad sound. It's terrible. And a lot of our documentaries can't travel because the sound is so bad. How do you get good sound? You pay for it. And you've got the sound people there all the time. And I mean, maybe you can speak to budgets at IFBA when you're in the forum there. It's $1.2 million or pounds for these big theatrical budgets, and ours are down at 200,000 euro or pounds.
Yeah, if you have a meeting like we did when we were pitching, we went to Locarno to pitch this film, and then various meetings. So for the guys in Belgium, some TV station in Belgium, then it was Arte France. Then we kind of just inflated the budget by like 2/3, and they were like, okay, this is good, because they're expecting that. I mean, it doesn't, your top sheet, you can just, when you're developing the film or in your early stage of production, the budget can be whatever you want it to be, right? So it's, again, it's about trust. If they look at it and they think this is like a low budget production, then it's not prestigious enough for us. But if you say you're spending $1 million on it or something, then they'll be like, okay, cool. We'll help you some of the way, we'll support it. So it's also about playing that game. Other thing I wanted to say about the co-production thing, especially with Europe, because it doesn't really help work so much with us with the US. But there seems to be this kind of like colonial mentality about these kind of sharks looking for African projects who are desperate for money that they have, and then they inflate the prices on their side once they get the money. Lots of people I know, the Arab countries have been swindled out of money from France and from those Nordic countries. So, and it becomes like this mess in your life that you have to deal with for years, the legal and all that, trying to get the money back for what you need. So just as a warning, co-production is a double-edged sword, That's why Mark's experience and with Jackie, because they became friends, and then they trust each other. When the Berlin send you a list of co-producers that they've scanned, and you kind of have to look through them, you don't really know what you're getting into with them. You have to meet these people, you have to maybe have a joint with them or have a drink, and then you get to know.
I think with that fund as well, they don't want you to spend it in Europe. They actually want you to spend it where your story is.
Which fund?
World Cinema Fund.
Oh.
But obviously, the producer you sign on would be raising other money in pre-sales and everything. So they're expected to do the work of the producer. And I think that's really important. They want to grow global voices from the world. And that's why they pick projects and they do mentor them to prevent exactly what you were describing.
Yes.
All of the funds that you mentioned so far, which we also get, thank you very much, in our newsletters, is it pure soft funding, or how does the
Or do they want the money back? Soft funding.
It's pure soft funding always, for development, production, post, all the way through.
Well, it depends also how much you get. I think for Blue Ice and IDFA, it's soft money, so you don't have to pay it back. But they, like someone like Doha, will insist that they premiere the film there, in the region.
But it's a big chunk of money.
It's a big chunk of money, so you got to like, okay, fine. So NFVF should be soft money, but they want the money back.
Yeah, as far as they don't develop it to soft money.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, come on. Take the money, don't pay it. It's your money.
But I mean, NFVF will only if you make profit.
Yeah.
Yeah, so not for development.
No, but they shouldn't be asking that anyway.
No, sure.
The other kind of funding comes out of if your film is in post. These rough cut pitches. So there are a couple that go for that are tailored for African. The big one is Venice, final cut. It's for African and Asian films, I think, in post. So they're really good if you get in, because usually they'll take 5 or 6 projects and they have lots of awards. There's awards for grading somewhere, there's an award for like subtitling your film in different languages, to do the ECP or sound mix. So they've got loads of different things. So even if you get one thing, it's good. So they, if your film is in post, maybe look at Venice, look at Carthage, the Tunisia, they have a final cut one.
What's it called?
It's called Takmil.
Takmil, yeah.
Takmil. Which means meeting place.
M-I-L.
Yeah.
But it's in the Tunis Film Festival, Carthage.
And the good thing is, if your film is close to ending and you get into Venice final cut and you finish your film by the end of the year with an award there, then they'll take it on next year, which is great, show your film in Venice.
Even if you don't get an award, the people judging it, like the head of the World Cinema Fund was judging the head of the jury at Takmil, Sundance guy, and so just so you know, there's eyeballs there who then can start being mentoring, a mentor of sorts for your global growth. So I know Nadine is so personable, but everybody fell in love with her and wanted to do things with her.
Yeah.
So she's even gone back to start shooting another feature.
In Tunis.
In Tunis now. So it's important to go to these things in any case, to make those relationships.
There's no funding for those, eh? I mean,
There is funding, they'll fly you to get in.
Yeah.
You get in, they fly you.
They'll fly you.
They usually, for Takmil, they'll take the director.
Yeah.
For if you get into like the ITFA summer school with the project in post, then they'll take the editor and the director. So you spend 5 days with great editors also working the film.
And Venice, is that? Yeah.
Venice, they'll take the director, because you're pitching the project.
Yeah.
You're not developing the rough cut.
Well, they pay you.
Yeah, they'll fly you also producer and director.
Yeah.
They should take the editor, definitely, but they don't.
Do they cover all the costs?
Yeah, they'll put you up. They'll give you a per diem. They'll probably feed you and probably not feed you. We put breakfast in the hotel and 1 or 2 dinners. But you'll get a per diem But the thing is, I mean, like we went to Locarno. They took us, me and my producer. But then, a cup of orange juice costs like 150 rand. So you're like, it's an expensive place. There's no one sleeping on the streets. Everyone looks good. Anyway, yeah, you do. So,
Don't forget your toothbrush. It will cost a fortune.
So there are those kind of finishing funds, finishing pitch spaces that are good. We're kind of running out of time because we're supposed to go through some of the pitching material and also maybe it's the stuff about writing a proposal for foreign funding. I mean, you all know what needs to go into a document, right? The synopsis, technical information, logline treatment, like concept, style, and all of that. Crew, I mean.
They have templates now. I mean, when you apply, they have these templates, and they're pretty clear about what they want and how many words, and if you overstop.
Yes, so if you apply for something like Sundance, where I applied with one thing and they said we thought it was a really powerful, terrific project, we're not going to give you any money, but please approach us when you're in post. And one of the interesting things was that the application in your budget, they put a lot of money aside for marketing, for materials, for festival exposure, in your budget, which is not something that you find afterwards, it's actually in your film production budget. And I thought that was something I'd never encountered before, and I thought it was really interesting.
Well, the NFVF could give good money for marketing.
Yeah.
Fairly good money for marketing.
And they will also send you overseas to some festivals if they like your project.
So yeah, as also with all of these funds, get the NFVF to you know, if you need some kind of payment, or if you really have to take your editor, you want to, because they're your co-author really in the story, then get the NFVF or push them to. NFVF is a whole different discussion though.
Also, you can look at films that you like and where they raise money, like The Shore Break has like a whole page of credits on their website. Where they got small pockets of money. How are you?
Teresa, everyone.
For the people who've done this before in the room, how many times is normal to apply to a single fund?
Oh, okay. So once usually, yeah. Sometimes, like Sundance will only let you apply once.
And same with World Cinema Fund.
Yeah. But Sundance, maybe you can apply later if it's in post or something, no? Something like, if it's at
And
a very
with
different
Common
stage.
Campus, you can apply to the different stations.
Yeah.
User station, doc station, writer station. I mean, at 13 and they let you apply, you can go more than once.
Yeah. IDFA, Bertha, I think it's like twice. You can apply maybe 3 times.
What, on the same project or different project?
Same
If you'd be
project.
rejected for...
Yeah, so a year later. But you have to,
Yeah,
it has to have developed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Then they can reject you again.
Yeah.
It's always nice. World Cinema, I don't know, but usually it's like a one-shot thing. But if you're going to apply it next year, make sure it's quite further down the line.
When is the World Cinema Fund deadline? Is it
a rolling
open?
thing?
It's usually rolling, but it's on the website. But
Yeah.
I mean, your project, you know, you need to find a German co-producer.
Okay, so it's co-producer based.
I think so.
Yeah, you
But
need a German.
You know, you could have gone with Swift to Berlin and had those meetings with the World Cinema face to face.
Or maybe you meet them in Sheffield. Look
Yeah,
for the
you'll probably, yeah.
stand or whatever.
Vincenzo usually goes to Sheffield.
You'll definitely Germans everywhere.
Well, I'm going to Berlin.
So make that on your list, and that you're going to meet a German producer for that fund. Know the criteria cold.
Yeah.
You know when is the right time to apply.
Yes. Berlin, that's the...
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so we don't really need to talk about what the details of what goes into the proposal writing, unless you want to. Or the main thing is like, who are you writing to, you know? The Americans have a very different way of seeing the world. So do the Europeans, kind of a bit more liberal in its outlook of the stories they want to tell, but still very Eurocentric. It's a shame we don't have funds on the continent to... We have here at Encounters through the Editors Guild, South African Guild of Editors, we have this a lab, a rough cut lab. So if your project is in post and you're in South Africa, and you've done like 5 or 6 weeks edit and on a feature-length independent film, you apply for the lab and you have like 5 days at the refinery with some very good local editors to mentor. You take like 3 projects and you've got 5 days with like support, you know, to overcome like 1 or 2 obstacles that you found along, 6 weeks into the cut and you hit the wall. So that's kind of a fund in a way, because it's all paid for. We fly down the editor and the director if they're in Joburg or from elsewhere.
Did you say that's Encounters or that's
Yeah,
Sage?
so Sage runs
South
it
African
with
Guild.
Encounters and the refinery.
Okay.
So last year we did it for the first time during the festival, but now it's going to be later in the year. So we're going to do the call out soon.
Okay.
So that's kind of a fund, and then you add it into your budget, like how much it would have cost for 5 days, pay the director and the editor in a facility. That's good.
In terms of the impact producing, I don't know if you saw the call out.
At UCT?
So Leonie Marsdorf and the group that worked a lot with Lily here on her film have put together a specific boot camp over a 2-day period. And that is specifically being moved to the weekend before you depart for Sheffield to accommodate people in our delegation. So we're very grateful to them for that.
Yeah, that would be a good thing to know if you're going to Sheffield and you want to partner up with the impact thing. Mostly the problem is around the terminology of it all, you know. But really, the nuts and bolts, it's good to, if you can push that film as much as you can to the audiences who need to see it. Or,
So do the Sheffield delegation have...
You'll need to apply for
You
it.
need to apply.
Yeah. But they specifically schedule it to accommodate all of us. And then on the 9th, the second weekend of Encounters, there'll be a general workshop for DFA people, specifically around development of new projects in the morning, and then some sessions in the afternoon around using the rebate, how to navigate co-productions. And they'll also have a specific session to feed back information about what that boot camp was about. So if you don't go to Sheffield and you're not able to go to the boot camp itself, you can still get the takeaways at the end of that session on the 9th.
On the 9th?
Yeah, so if you're away in Sheffield, try and get into the boot camp itself. When you come.
No, I don't understand. Is that in Sheffield will be
The
the...
boot camp is here in Cape Town,
Yes.
2nd and 3rd.
Okay.
And then the 9th will be a general DFA session. There's one on the 2nd in Joburg, one on the 9th in Cape Town. And that information will go out quite shortly as well.
what are the
Does
dates?
one have to pay for that?
It'll be free.
What are the Sheffield dates?
6th to the
7th to the 13th.
June.
Yeah.
You see, this is a problem because Encounters we should kind of use
Yeah,
as
such a...
festival.
Yeah.
I was going to say, it looks like there might not be time to look at the trailers, but I want to offer to everyone here that, because we're in Cape Town, I'm happy to look at to watch the stuff if you want to, and then if you want my kind of advice, and then I talk to you about the stuff over the next couple of weeks, because then actually maybe give more time focus to the thing. We could either meet or just send it and then watch it and we just write to each other or talk afterwards or meet, whatever. So happy to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's great.
Cool. What else?
You were going to talk about the Herbert Bowles.
Huber Ball's Fund. I don't know much about it, but I know they're there.
Okay.
Do you know about Huber Balls? Rotterdam thing.
It's Rotterdam. It's attached to their Cinemart, which is how Durban Film Art was designed in partnership. So it's by application, and it's a great. If you get in to meet people there, it's one of the prizes is to go and be in the mart, and there's lots of mentoring around it.
So I may be laboring under fallacy or misconception, but don't they want you to have already some of your money? And only if you actually already have some of your money and a synopsis, then they will give you the additional.
Huber Balls.
Yeah. I
Well,
believe
you
so.
all have
Maybe.
money here if
Yeah.
you apply for the DTI rebate, and that's how Mark funded his co-production with Holland. It was all Dutch money except for the rebate.
So effectively, if you're over a 500 million budget, 500,000 budget at this point,
You do have money.
and you have the intention to use the rebate, you already have a commitment of 35%.
Because they want you to
So, okay, so maybe we'll talk about this a bit after lunch, but effectively, if you're going to make use of the rebate, if it's a South African or a co-production, you're going to get 35% back of your qualifying spend. So effectively, you've got a commitment of 35% of your South African monies.
So my understanding of Hugo Balls is they want you to actually, with all your paperwork, you have to submit a letter from whoever it is that's giving you the money to say, so say for example it's Nescafe. You get a letter from Nescafe SA saying we have committed as a company so much money
two easels.
So they only jump on the train once the train is moving. They don't push the train out of the
So
station.
that's why I'm saying maybe I'm wrong.
That's our job.
How much money?
The Hubert Balls Fund has schemes for several stages of completion, early on for script and project development or after shooting for post-production. So I think it just depends, but you will have a letter from the DTI saying 35% of qualifying.
So then I guess
That's a real letter, it's
Yeah.
bankable.
Yeah.
And you can get that letter even before you've applied for it, can you?
No.
No.
You
So
have
you've
to
got
be-
to
You gotta
apply.
have it first,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's all about the timing.
Yeah.
But practically speaking, it's pretty predictable. There's a list of requirements. If you
Yes.
can tick the list, you know you've got a really good chance.
Has anyone ever got funding from Catapult? Film Fund. Specifically for developers where we are, it's about getting your training and materials ready. Whereas most of these other fundings, they need to see something already, so they assume you've already had some funding success.
Is that a global fund? I thought it was
I can't think of
American.
anyone.
It's American, you don't have to have a fiscal sponsor in place before you apply, but if you do get the funding, you need to then organize a fiscal sponsor who's based in the States.
Oh yes, this fiscal sponsor.
They help you with this. I just thought they were quite interesting because they're the only fund I found that specifically helped early development.
Okay.
It's quite cool. But,
And the NFF will help. If
and
you get
of course
the
the NFF,
NFF development funding
Yeah,
on a
exactly.
documentary is 150,000 rand.
Yeah.
But they're very onerous in what they demand of you. And the research part, what I found there was great. It was very easy. But they also,
And it's
yes.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, it's like.
It's completely bizarre to me,
Yeah.
and I think what you simply have to do is imagine. You've done a certain amount of research. Imagine what it's going to be like,
Yeah, that's what I
and
think.
invent a script. Just be creative,
Yeah.
and then you give them something. And the fact that when you actually shoot it, you find a whole lot of different things. They have to know that it changes.
So they don't ask you for the treatment.
They do.
They do. They want all these documents, and I think that's why we're saying it's just bizarre because some of the documents, in a sense, cancel each other out. You know, so why do they want all of
So
them?
as the DFA, we have been engaging with them to try and
Oh, really?
you know, ease the relationship and the understanding. I think you're quite often dealing with people who come from a fiction background and don't really know our genre very well. And there's a level of anxiety from funders as to, but what will it look like?
Yeah.
Will you tick the boxes I have regarding nation building language, etc., etc.? And so, you know, they want to see the paperwork.
I told them that.
We're engaging with them to say, okay, you know, look, it's obviously a process.
I
Things
think
will
it's
change.
I think it's very interesting because I'm thinking, oh well, audiovisual scripts. What do they look like? And then you can get free downloads. I managed to find, but I think they're actually useless because they're too detailed. You've got a column for your video, and there's a column for the audio and the dialogue and all the rest, and it will format very easily. And then you can also get 3 columns. But I really think, maybe because I come from a drama background, that it's much easier just to go into either Word or preferably something like Final Draft or Movie Magic or whatever. There's also a free program, by the way, that Amazon have just brought out for screenwriting, Amazon Screenwriter or something, and then just write it up. Like action, we follow Mary Jane or Sipo as they walk out of the thing, and then you write a little bit. Sipo confronts, and then you've got a bit of dialogue. Maybe you've done that research already. You know, what are you aiming to do now? I really don't know. I'm hoping for money. Whatever, you actually just put it in that kind of format.
Yeah, that's what I did. I discussed it. I found it quite a funny and good exercise in a way.
Yes.
And then I used some of you know, what I transcribed, you know, some
Yes, that's
of that, you know.
So it's a
in
full
your
template,
research.
huh?
Yeah.
It's a full template.
No, the
Oh, no,
template
you
gives
can
enough.
do it. You can do.
Yeah, I think the column one is too demanding because it forces you to write down what the image is. You know, we follow Stephen Cohen through the Lille flea market. That's enough. You don't say he stops at the Nazi memorabilia. I don't want to go that detail. I'd rather just keep it vague and keep it in one thing, which is now kind of reads quite well. And it's basically, I think, some imagining and some bullshitting, to put it. And that's okay. No one can tell you what you're going to discover when you're there, but you know roughly what you want to do. So you just have to be imaginative and assume that everything is there that you hope will be there. We look at some old footage of archive of Stephen and his brother playing on the beach at Musenberg. I mean, maybe that doesn't exist. I'm hoping it does. I'm going to say that. Something like that.
Sorry to interrupt again, we're just going to swap our batteries one more time.
Okay, maybe it's a good place.
Let me show you a minute of this film. It deals with the same concerns, only it's set in, etc., etc. That you could do as well.
I wouldn't show them anything. I would mention it. I would say, look, I made a film.
Okay.
This is kind of a follow-up, and it just did really well. It blew everyone out of the water.
Yes.
Now this is the follow-up. It's going to be even better.
Yeah.
I wouldn't show.
Okay. Yeah, because it's
then
too
you start showing the new
perspective.
stuff. But if they're interested, then you say, look, I'll send you a link to the other film.
Yes. Okay.
And,
Thank you.
cool. Okay, thanks guys. Good luck.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thanks for having me.